Hi, Des Hannigan here. I hope you're well and feeling fit because we're going to sea. Now, there be gales, I know, but it's mid-August, and August is the wickedest month. It's a sort of rehearsal for deep winter, but not yet. Not yet. There's plenty of good times to come. But perhaps, because I'm wearing a fisherman's hat, because I think there's maybe time for a little flash fiction verse about the shipping forecast. Everybody's favourite bedtime story, except for those who are out at sea, wondering what the next 24 hours will bring, because it's never good news. But the forecast, it's a poem in itself. Books have been written about it, numerous verses, songs, prayers, and I expect there's a musical somewhere. Forecast is a lullaby in the early hours for those of us not at sea, when you can't get to sleep. And as you doze off to the dulcet tones of the broadcaster, those wonderful lyrical names of the shipping forecast areas, they get mixed up in your head. Have you noticed? Possibly not, because you're probably half asleep by then. But Humber becomes slumber. Dover becomes rover, and Hebrides becomes herbal tea. You may have noticed, however, in this little verse I'm going to read, that I use the name Finisterre for that lonely sea area west of Biscay and south of Seoul. It was renamed Fitzroy in 2002 because they felt it conflicted with the Spanish and French Finisterre area. But I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I thought Fitzroy was most annoying. But until I warmed to it greatly, because it was named after a remarkable man, the Rear Admiral Robert Fitzroy. It was 19th century sailor, meteorologist, truly remarkable man. He was a captain of the Beagle, sailed with the Darwin. He and Darwin were very good friends, but they argued furiously because Fitzroy was deeply religious and he was most uneasy about the evolutionary theories that were coming off. He was a touch bad-tempered, and he was known in the lower decks, where the people like me hang about, as Hot Coffee. Great, lovely name. That's without sugar. But in a way, he did great things. He founded effectively the Met Office and the shipping forecast because he was concerned greatly about the safety of sailors, and especially fishermen. Because the fishing fleet owners of those days, they'd send the fleets out to sea in truly abysmal weather and a great loss of life. Because they didn't care. They were in their cosy offices and clubs. So Fitzroy established a series of coastal stations. They could use the newly invented telegraph to send in reports to a central point of weather conditions and what was coming and so on. And then he also established storm warning cones at fishing ports. It was terrific because it really did save lives. However, when he died, the fleet owners stopped it. They cancelled the whole thing, but the fishermen united and rebelled against it, and it was reinstated. And from there was developed effectively the shipping forecast of today. Fitzroy was a little sad, really, because he was a governor of New Zealand at one time, did great work and protected and helped the Maoris against the wishes of London merchants and politicians. There's nothing new there. But he became quite ill in later life and suffered from depression. And he got into financial difficulties because he had a substantial fortune and he spent it helping people, charities and public works and so on. So sadly, he eventually took his own life in 1865. But he's left this fantastic legacy, so I don't mind Fitzroy. It's a little bit of sort of potted history for you there. Now, I've called this piece The Flipping Shorecast because it sort of reverses the status of the forecast as a sort of sentimental and national treasure, and it sends it back to sea where it belongs. And the phrase flipping shorecast is also a euphemism for what fishermen call the forecast, because it really is never good news. The flipping shorecast. Lie abed, landlubbers lie. when hard the winds through Viking fly, from Forties down to Finisterre, then west to Fastnet, Irish Sea, and north once more to Hebrides. Don't think on how the night may fare beyond this still and slumbrous air of easy berths and cosy beds where limbs entwine, a world away from Forties Forth and Old Biscay. Those names, those songlines of the deep that rock the dreamy lap of sleep, where duvet sailors, snug and warm, drift on their beds through Malin Hebrides, safe from the looming menace of the storm. Mark off those gales, 9, 10, 11, 12, a tally-ho of hellish winds, an abacus from hell, a rising count of flying squads and squalls that rage across the rolling sea and sky. Except where beds, not boats, go drifting by. And as we doze on even keels in bed, we sift those names with pleasure through our heads, and we mingle them in sleepy symphonies of slumber, Times and Rover, Portakabin, Plymouth Gin, and herbal tea. Not where they lie, out on the western sea, braced in their dog sleep fitfully, or standing watch bent to the rabid truth beyond the forecast's dulcet, measured sound, comes news of gales and outrage, soul and Lundy bound. And when we wake, in drowsy somnolence, though windows rattle, roofs may shake, we snuggle down against the outside roar of gales of wind and thunder at the door, with not much thought for those offshore, for whom the forecast is a very different beast, not quite the lyric feast we landlocked lubbers relish with our morning tea. Instead, a list of baleful warnings that drove an old sea dog like me far, far away from Lundy, Fastnet, Irish Sea, to where I sing grace notes of the landlock here. I've turned the sea and turned its baleful gaze awry, buried the hook in harvests, woods and fields, and culled the ocean's malice from the sky. Happy to lie abed as we go sailing by. The flipping Shorecast. Hang on to the boat and your breakfast.